It is sometimes said that horror fans are some of the most forgiving fans, because even when we get something that is it's still good. The entire genre is saturated with low-tier movies that we still seem to find enjoyable and want more of. I think the same could be said about true crime fans. True crime books are like literary junk food. It's rarely good, but it is still enjoyable and it still leaves you reaching for more. Every once in a while, when we get something truly spectacular, it is so appreciated. So, I wanted to make a short video about good true crime books, because yes, true crime books can be beautifully written and deep. So here are some of my very favorite and what makes them worth reading. My Friend Dahmer is a graphic novel and memoir written by John Durf Backderf. He is a cartoonist. He has a really distinct, interesting style. He was also one of Jeffrey Dahmer's few friends in high school. He was part of a tight-knit circle of friends that knew and associated with Dahmer. So he definitely has a unique perspective and insight into what Jeffrey Dahmer was like before he became a serial killer. One thing I really like about this book is that the author manages to perfectly balance being empathetic toward Dahmer's plight while also not minimizing the depravity of his crimes. I find that it is very hard for most writers and most people to exist in that space and to be able to strike that kind of balance. He managed to create a book that is totally nuanced and layered. A lot of true crime books are just one note all throughout. But the magic of My Friend Dahmer lies in that it somehow hits all of the high and low notes. It is profoundly tragic, but it is also charming. It has both endearing and funny moments. It is so humanistic in the sense that it captures the complexity of this situation. You can strongly feel the writer's intolerance of Dahmer's crimes, and you can also sense that he feels for the teenage boy that Dahmer used to be, but not for the man that he became. Backderf revisits his memories of Dahmer and realizes in retrospect that his friend was struggling to cope with lots of hidden demons. A dysfunctional family, his sexuality, teenage alcoholism, difficulties with socializing. They were only kids back then, and no one had the wherewithal or the tools to identify that their classmate was deeply unwell. Even though Dahmer seemed to be generally well-liked as the class clown, no one really knew him beyond the capacity of acquaintanceship and superficial friendship. Definitely not an easy maneuver to pull off. Cassie Bernal was one of 13 people who were murdered during the 1999 Columbine school shooting. This memoir was written by her mother, Misty Bernal. The book goes over Cassie's upbringing, her rebellious teenage phase, and her rekindling her Christian faith. It is titled She Said Yes because it was initially reported that Cassie had been shot by Eric Harris after she responded yes when he supposedly asked her if she believed in God. It was later determined that this exchange between Eric and Cassie had not taken place. I will elaborate on this point in just a moment. I have read this book several times, and every time I reread it, it leaves me with this renewed appreciation for life and for the people in it. This is one of those books that really makes you think about how short life is and how not guaranteed tomorrow is. What sets this book apart from the others is that it is a fusion of two distinct genres. It is true crime, and it is also a Christian memoir. Normally, when these two genres intersect, I find that it is usually not pulled off well. But this is a rare example of true crime meets Christian memoir that is actually very nicely done. Since She Said Yes was published, there has been some controversy over whether or not Cassie had been asked about her faith, and if she had responded or if she had just been shot right away. There is now generally a consensus that this conversation never actually took place. And when it comes to that controversy, my opinion is, whatever was said or not said doesn't change the impact that her story has had. It doesn't diminish how important her faith was to her or how good of a book this is. The most interesting thing about Cassie's story to me is how, before she had rekindled her faith, she had actually been on a path that was eerily similar to that of her killers. If anyone could have empathized with what the shooters might have been grappling with, it likely would have been Cassie. While she had always been a good, kind kid, she had gone through a dark, painful phase herself. She and her friends had fantasized about murder and self-harm. However, she pulled through whatever dark phase she had gone through. Before she was killed, she reconnected with both her faith and her family. She also recommitted herself to school and to getting her grades up. And that was part of the reason why she happened to be studying in the library early that morning. I love She Said Yes. It will always have a very special place in my heart. It's a powerful testament of redemption and how people can turn things around for the better. It also makes me sad, though. If only every troubled teen in this story could have also found the same redemption that Cassie had been able to find. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about redemption through her death. Cassie had made a huge effort during the last chapter of her life to be a better person. And whether or not she verbally said yes, she will always be remembered for that. Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. Vincent Bugliosi was a prosecutor and he helped put Charles Manson behind bars. I thought I knew almost everything about the Manson murders until I read this book. This book picks up where the majority of books and documentaries end. When we talk about the Manson murders, or any true crime case for that matter, the story normally ends with the killer or killers being apprehended. But once they are tossed into the black hole that is the legal system, it is still an upwards battle and a journey that we normally don't get to hear a lot about. Since this book was written by the main prosecutor, we get a lot of juicy insider information that we ordinarily would not be privy to. Helter Skelter allows you to be a fly on the wall, and it is chock full of details that you just won't get from watching documentaries or reading books written by crime journalists. It is also very well written, and I think he did a wonderful job of keeping the reader hooked. If you're especially interested in criminal law or the legal system, this one is definitely for you. Bugliosi explains in detail how difficult it was to build a case against Charles Manson. Remember, Manson never killed anyone, so this prosecutor had to prove to the jury that even though Charles Manson didn't kill anyone, he was still responsible for what happened. Similar to Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi, Conviction is a true crime book written by a prosecutor who was instrumental in securing a guilty conviction. And just like Helter Skelter, this book allows us to have the rare vantage point of what the trial was like from behind the scenes. Juan Martinez also had to build a case against Jodi Arias. I will say, Conviction is an entertaining and informative book, but it is not nearly as well written as Helter Skelter. If you've seen any footage from the Arias trial, this book was very much written in classic Juan Martinez fashion. No flowery language, it is just straight to the point. Again, not an unforgettable book, but still a very honorable mention. I'm currently reading Stalling for Time by Gary Nessner. My brother recommended this book a while back, and I've actually had it for quite some time now, and I've been meaning to read it. Nessner was the FBI's chief hostage negotiator. This book is a recounting of all of the high-intensity hostage situations he encountered during his decades-long career, including the Waco siege with David Koresh. This book also inspired the Waco miniseries on Netflix. I do find the psychology of hostage negotiation very interesting. It seems like Nesner was part of a movement within the FBI, a movement in which they were trying to learn how to use more nonviolent techniques to get what they wanted. So these nonviolent techniques involve talking with the subject and developing rapport with them. And I find all of that stuff pretty fascinating. Clearly, that's not how it went down with Waco, so I'm interested in learning why Waco was such a failure. I'm only on chapter 2 right now, but we'll see how it goes. I recently finished reading Murder in the Bayou by Ethan Brown. Ethan Brown is a pretty well-respected investigative journalist, and he is known for thoroughly researching any case that he covers. Murder in the Bayou details the tangled web that was the investigation into the murders of 8 Louisiana women. This book will give you a look into the murky underworld of the sex work and drug scene in Jennings, Louisiana. On paper, it sounds like a fascinating read, but I have to say, despite everything going for it, I found it to be painfully dry. Drier than a Popeye's biscuit. It took me a really long time to even finish reading it because it reads more like a timeline of events, dates, and names, as opposed to an actual story being told. So it seems like Ethan Brown might be a better researcher than he is a storyteller. But if you enjoy research-heavy true crime, then you might enjoy this book.